Hey everyone. So today I want to go over an article that a lot of you have been sending over my way. It's about the US government now photographing and fingerprinting everyone entering and leaving the country. Not just snowbirds staying more than 30 days, it's everyone. I'm going to share my thoughts on that later. I've also got some updates on the travel situation in the US, with the US government shutdown now dragging into 5 weeks. TSA staff and air traffic controllers have officially gone 5 weeks without their pay, and like I mentioned in earlier videos, this is about the time we would start seeing the delays and cancellations start to pile up. We'll go through this in a moment. Today's backdrop is another photo from my mom, taken during their first Eastern Canada trip. She told me she still has about 5,000 photos to go through, on top of the other ones that she's working on. So between her shots and the ones that the community is sending me, I think we're set for photos for a very, very long time. Thanks again, Mom, for sending these over. And a quick one before we start. Take a quick glance at the subscribe button to make sure you're still subscribed. We're still getting a lot of people saying that they're randomly unsubbed. I have no idea what's going on with this YouTube glitch, but I really appreciate everyone double checking. Alright, let's get into the report. We'll get into the TSA and ATC one first.
The Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport there as the government shutdown stretches into day 26. The shutdown is straining air travel as airports across the country have reported more staffing shortages than usual. Without enough manpower, there are rising concerns about possible safety lapses. Thousands of flights were delayed Saturday and more than 500 were canceled. Jen Sullivan has the details on what's causing the staff shortages and what travelers can expect during the shutdown.
Thousands of flights have been delayed this weekend as airports across the country deal with staffing shortages.
There's going to be a lot less people coming in as people are going to be running out of money.
So when the US government shutdown first started, federal workers were supposed to get I think a half paycheck and that was it. Now they're past an entire pay cycle with nothing coming in. And just like what I mentioned a few weeks ago, the wave of sick leaves and time off is starting to hit. This is causing delays. And if you're going to a Jays game in LA, potentially you're going to be delayed. There's more and more reports of TSA and air traffic controllers picking up side gigs, things like Uber, DoorDash, and delivery jobs, just to cover what they have in lost wages. Later in this video, I have a first-hand report from an ATC officer who has taken a part-time job just to put food on the table. We'll take a look at that one in a bit.
Oksana Kelly is a TSA agent in Orlando. Right now, she's not getting paid because of the government shutdown. Yet she still has to show up to work because TSA agents and air traffic controllers are considered essential employees. But many are having to call out sick because they say they simply can't afford to pay for things like gas or childcare costs.
If I have nowhere to leave my kids, how am I going to come to work?
According to flight tracker site FlightAware, more than 5,000 flights were delayed Saturday. More than 500 were canceled.
Okay, when I first came across this report offline, I didn't realize it was just Saturday. I thought these numbers had been going on since the government shutdown started. But since it's just a Saturday, it kind of makes it worse. Now, I've mentioned in the past videos, for us Canadians, it isn't really an issue because we're not traveling to the US anyways. But for anyone heading farther south, like Mexico or anywhere else, and if your flight has a stopover in the US, you might get caught up in these delays. So my best advice, try to avoid US stopovers altogether. It might cost a bit more for a direct flight or a connection outside of the US, but it'll save a lot of headaches in the long run.
Many of those delays are being blamed on staffing shortages.
We've gone up as high as 53% of the delays have been because of staffing shortages, and that number moves every single day.
It's frustrating some passengers.
I'm flying today on sheer faith.
They probably just need to come to an agreement and reopen the government.
Since the shutdown began October 1st, more than 250 FAA facilities have reported staffing problems. That's more than 4 times the number reported during the same period last year. The longer the shutdown lasts, the more financial pressure it puts on these workers.
That leads to an unnecessary distraction, and they cannot be 100% focused on their jobs, which makes this system less safe every day that this shutdown continues.
Travelers are being warned to expect longer security lines and to monitor their flights for any changes. All of this with less than a month to go before the busy holiday travel season.
You know what's funny? I actually saw a bunch of TikTok videos, probably from people on the far right, bragging that they got through TSA in just a few minutes. They're saying there's no issues at all at the airports and that the travel chaos is just overhyped. What they're not understanding is that there's so many factors that go into it. Time of day, how many flights are departing at once, how many TSA and ATC agents call in sick. It all adds up. Sure, some people might get lucky and breeze through the airport, But when you hit a perfect storm of delays and shortages, your flight could end up being delayed, canceled, or you miss your flight entirely because the TSA line was too long. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to take that risk. Now, this next clip dives into how all of this is personally affecting the federal workers.
CBS's senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve spoke with Jack Criss, a controller in the Washington, D.C. area, a single dad. He's taken to delivering food on his days off to make sure he can still afford his teenage daughter's tuition.
How stressful is life right now with this shutdown?
It's been incredibly difficult. You can feel the tension, and it's heavy, and it hurts.
From the standpoint of a single working dad, how is all of this impacting life at home?
That's a great question. It's hard enough just going to work. Now when you add in not getting paid, that's when you just like multiply the level of pressure. And you know, air traffic is a safety sensitive position. The margin of error is zero. So if you think about it, it's pressure on top of pressure when you don't know exactly when you'll get paid based on politics.
And are you making enough door dashing to cover the tuition bill?
No. No, not even close. I would have to dash more than I'm willing to in order to manage that.
At Philadelphia International Airport today, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned that delays and cancellations will only get worse as the shutdown drags on if more air traffic controllers call out.
You can really feel the stress in his voice, and even more in his body language as well. I do feel for these federal workers going through this. Well, at least the ones that didn't vote for it. Whether it's ATC or TSA officers, you know for sure they're going to be distracted on the job right now. A TSA worker might be standing at the X-ray machine, thinking about how he's going to feed their family and missing something critical. Or an air traffic controller might be worrying about next month's rent, and one small slip-up could be disastrous. The risks are higher right now when flying in the US, whether people wanted to admit it or not. And that's because of the human emotion factor that's going on right now with the federal workers. Which brings me to the last report on this topic. Safety within the industry.
As the government shutdown continues, there are growing concerns over air safety.
Air traffic controllers are among the many government employees who will not get a paycheck on Tuesday. As Rebecca Castor tells us, this could have a major impact with holiday travel season just weeks away.
Holiday travelers might be in for some turbulence this year if the government doesn't reopen in time. While so far disruptions have been minimal, roughly 13,000 air traffic controllers are set to miss their first paycheck.
Wait, minimal? We literally heard from the last report, and even from the Transportation Secretary, that the delays and issues are going to get worse. Having 5,000 plus delays on a Saturday doesn't sound like minimal to me. So yeah, I'm just calling out the downplaying here. Then again, this report is from a Fox affiliate.
On Tuesday, and Secretary Duffy is warning travelers more significant delays and cancellations will likely become inevitable.
If we don't have enough controllers, if we have controllers that are more stressed and less able to do the job, we pay close attention to that, and we will reduce the capacity of airplanes taking off and landing, or we will cancel flights. I'm less concerned about you getting there on time. I want you to be safe.
The Transportation Secretary has visited a number of air traffic control towers over the last 2 weeks and says many of the workers are angry and frustrated.
An angry and frustrated ATC worker. Yeah, that's not the person I want managing my flights taking off and landing. I'm not blaming them either, though. Going weeks without pay does a lot to your emotions and focus. Just think about all the airport incidents we've seen this year. From what I've read, budget cuts and funding issues have played a big role in that. Now add this on top of it. People who control the planes are tired, stressed, and running on emotions. And quite frankly, your life is in their hands. Okay, I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but am I really that far off?
And some are having to make tough decisions to make ends meet.
They're looking at getting second jobs. They're looking at driving for Uber, DoorDash. They have gas payments, put in their car. They're paying for childcare, mortgages. They're like every single American who may live paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford this.
Duffy says the shutdown is also hurting his department's efforts to recruit more air traffic controllers and says some students are even dropping out of the FAA Academy because they don't want a job that doesn't pay.
Now tell me, who in their right mind would want a job right now that doesn't pay? Now eventually the shutdown will end. At least I hope it does. But with how divided the Democrats and Republicans are, there's a good chance we'll see more shutdowns within the next 3 years. So right now, being a federal worker in the US is a risky job.
A Republican bill to pay all essential workers still on the job during the shutdown failed in the Senate Thursday. But new legislation from Senator Ted Cruz, which focuses solely on paying air traffic controllers and TSA agents, could be voted on next week. Flight issues were key to reopening the government during the longest shutdown ever in 2019.
So if any Canadians or even international travelers are still thinking of going to the United States, or maybe they're trying to save a little bit of money by booking a stopover flight through the US, I'd really think carefully about whether or not it's the right decision. Now I get it, some people are still going regardless, and that's really up to them. And if they get stuck, no sympathy from me. But just consider the factors that are out of your control, and ask yourself, is it really worth the risk right now? And if you need another reason not to go to the US, a new report just confirmed that Canadians will now be photographed when entering and exiting the United States. Not just the snowbirds who stay longer than 30 days, everyone. Now I'm not going to read out the whole article for you, but the link is in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. But I do want to go over the main points from the article. The first point mentions facial recognition scans. CBP is rolling out a new rule that will require almost all non-US citizens, including visitors, temporary workers, and others, to have their photo or facial biometric data captured when they're entering and exiting the United States. Now, I'm kind of curious on how that's going to work on the land crossings, where you have multiple people in the car. Are they going to ask you to get out and scan their faces one by one? I don't know how that's going to work. The rule also applies to every type of entry and exit, airports, seaports, and land borders. So that means Canadians crossing into the US might soon face mandatory biometric scanning every single time, in or out. Now this next point is the one that actually concerns me. The data that's being collected will be published to a federal register, and it's going to start soon. This regulation was published on October 27, 2025, and is expected to kick in about 60 days from now. So in other words, you're now in a federal database for the government to be used. Now realistically, our data is probably already in the system if you've ever crossed into the US before. But now, it just means it's going to be officially expanded, and it's most likely going to be used against us at some point in the future. I'll explain my reasoning on this one in a second, but let me finish the article first. This new rule massively expands the US biometric tracking system, basically ramping up how non-US citizens are monitored every time they enter or exit the country. And according to the article, this is expected to become a bigger deterrent for Canadians who might still be thinking about traveling to the US. It also points out that with facial recognition and biometric capturing, there are growing concerns about how the data is going to be stored, shared, and used, and this could affect non-citizen rights when crossing the border. Now, I've done my fair share of traveling over the last 12 to 15 years, mostly for work. I filled up 5 passports during this time from different countries around the world. So I already know my biometric and facial recognition data is stored on a lot of systems out there. So for me personally, the idea of taking fingerprints or facial scans doesn't really faze me. Biometric data collection itself isn't new. A lot of countries do it. But what concerns me is which governments is capturing the data. If I'm entering a place like Singapore, for example, and they ask me for facial scans or fingerprints, fine, no problem. But when it comes to the United States government, that's where I have an issue. Because we have no idea what the data might be used for in the future by the US government, or whether it could be eventually used against us for those who travel to the US later on. We already know there's racial and religious profiling happening, and that the actions are often taken based on your beliefs, or whether or not you don't like Donald Trump, or maybe just having a JD Vance meme on your phone. So the idea that this data is potentially being shared among US departments doesn't sit right with me at all. For me, it all comes down to trust. And realistically, I don't think any of us trust the US government right now. So really think about what your data could be used for by this current administration. Because if I had to guess, the information that Trump and his cronies are collecting under this new rule isn't going to be used for anything positive. If you found this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button to help get this message out to more people. And share it with your friends as well. And if you're still here and you want to see my other videos, check out the ones that are popping up on your screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.